Do you want to kind of walk around and talk?
Yeah, we can do that too.
No, I'm Elena.
I'm Ellen Pogemiller.
Nice to meet you. I met your mom when she was campaigning for you.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. You might have probably met my dad too, because they were usually a tag team. But maybe
She was just here by herself.
Okay, that's funny.
Yeah. And I'm Barclay.
Barclay?
Yes.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How
So,
are you doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm good. Good.
yeah, I was like,
Thank you.
just like, very cool.
I was doing it and I kept doing it. I was like, I gotta stop. Like I will.
Right now,
Like I'll just keep doing it.
Yeah. Just
Okay.
because it's all like
Yeah.
UV reactive arts.
We actually bought a magnet UV
Cool.
art. That was
Sweet.
it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Feel free to look around if you have any
Okay,
questions.
awesome.
Alright.
Thank you.
So I think like the main questions that we have are what do you think are the most critical issues right now facing your constituents?
I would say that the top issues that I heard on the door were education, public education, protecting, supporting. And the second one was affordable housing and homelessness, really focused on supporting those that are unhoused, and how do we not less on punishment and way more on like supporting and trying to provide. Yeah, we can sit down. Yeah, that is going to be weird.
Yeah.
Sorry. And then the third one I would say kind of falls in the category of just protecting LGBTQ community and immigrant community.
Okay.
Kind of just making people feel safe and making sure that laws are not disproportionately impacting those populations.
Okay. And so how does that work like practically? Like what do you have power to do this kind of thing, or is it tough with the
It is I mean
majority right now?
yeah, I would say in my first 2 weeks of being at the Capitol, it's much more difficult than I think I was pretty aware of the challenges it faces to be a super minority. But in a committee, so bills have to start, they are filed, and then they are put on a committee. Bills that are selected by the committee chairs. So those at this point again are going to be Republicans, and then the committee is made up structurally of kind of the same percentage. So we have 80 Republicans, 20 Democrats, basically. So on 2 of the committees of the 5 committees that I'm on, I'm the only Democrat on the committee. So it is way more challenging to try to, maybe change or sway votes. But it's still critically important to be the voice of questioning the intent of language of the law, who we're impacting. Is this really a priority of the state? And what kind of adverse impact could that make in the community, that we serve?
Yeah.
So.
It's pretty partisan, right? The voting. Is that how it's been? Or?
I mean, I would say, for the in honesty, you would have, say, 10 bills. 6 of those probably everybody agrees on in the room.
Okay.
Way more than you think.
That's good.
2 maybe a little bit, bipartisan. Maybe you have a couple of Republicans and Democrats who are voting for or against it, and then 2 really are, straight party votes that you feel like, specifically those, you wish there was a little more conversation around those bills. But yeah, it's not as bad as you think, but I think bills that rise to the level of media are social media engagement. Those are going to kind of be your worst bills, and those are going to be your most partisan bills typically.
Yeah. And a lot of those don't get passed, right?
Correct. They'll get out of committee, so that's why committees are really hard, but that's also where you kind of start the push out to the state of like, hey, here's the intent of this bill. It may get through committee, but then stop short of getting anywhere further. They allow their member to kind of get the headline, but dies quietly and,
Absolutely.
you know, doesn't impact us in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it doesn't hurt people in the short term.
Right. Yeah, I find it hard to follow the bills because you know, people will post when they go to committee, and then they'll post when they pass the committee, and then there's a long wait, and it's hard to keep up with that sort of thing. Is there a good resource for that?
I honestly, it's even hard as a legislator to keep
Yeah.
up with the bills. You know, I think we are, between House and Senate, there were 3,000 bills filed
Okay.
this session. So in reality, it's hard for all of us to really manage legislation in a way that feels like we can follow it all the way through. It's probably, I have not used this system yet. I think you can technically online. If there's a bill you really care about, you can sign up for alerts, and so maybe get like an email. But other than that, you know, I guess we get committee lists, so that's kind of how we can track what's actually on the agenda every day. But no, I don't. I mean, it's overwhelming for everybody.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's just the reason why we have to trust whoever we put into office for them to take care of that. And that's kind of the reason that I wanted to meet with you.
Yeah.
And because you seem like a good person to me. And I think that it would be, so like right now, is there anything that your constituents can do to support you?
Oh, yeah. So, you know, for me, always, I really do encourage people to reach out and email. Even if you see a bill on social media and you think, oh, she's aligned with me, I don't need to contact her. It helps to hear from your constituents, you know, that is legislation they really want you to support or fight back against, even if you feel like it's aligned with our values, because that gives me it gives me the opportunity to say, this is something my constituents really care about. I'm hearing from them on this issue. Sometimes people can provide stories. There was a bill recently that dealt with, you know, IEPs, which are service plans in a public school system. People said very, you know, personal stories about the impact that had on their child. There was a Dusty Devers bill that was basically trying to do away with IEP services in the state. Overwhelmingly, we received emails, legislators, Republicans and Democrats, and he, as a Republican, ended up pulling his bill.
Really?
You know,
Okay.
It wouldn't even go to committee. And
Yeah.
so, but you know, those stories came to me, and you know, we're reaching out too, saying, hey, you can't hear this bill. We may not talk to that person directly, but like, we're talking to members to be like, surely you're getting this getting these feedback from your constituents. They don't want this bill.
Right.
You know, so it helps with conversation. It helps to know that this is something that people really care about. So I really do encourage people, even if you think she supports it or is against it like me, it's helpful.
Yeah.
And then, you know, right now, committee work is important. So the other thing I would say is, even if there's a bill going to a committee that you care about and I'm not on that committee, you can still contact committee members.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
because they are representing kind of their constituents, but they're also representing the whole state, because that decides what goes on after that.
Right.
So,
but to know what committees there are and
yeah, so
all
that's the
that
hard
is-
part. You'd
yeah.
have to, you know, that's where I am grateful for so many advocacy organizations. But if someone says, hey, this bill is up in, you know, public health,
Yeah.
look up the committee members and email all of those committee members.
Okay. Okay.
That's an important step too.
Would your office be open to like contacting us when there's a bill up that you want support on?
I'm trying to think practically how we would do that.
Right, yeah.
That is,
I mean, I could check in.
Yeah.
occasionally.
We
Okay.
can, I would say it's probably hardest right now just because there's so many bills. When they come to the floor, that's much more practical.
Yeah.
And I think the other struggle for me would be like knowing what people, so many different issues people care about, so
Yes.
trying to figure out, is this
Yeah.
maybe if we fall under those categories. So I would have to work with her because she covers both our assistants in the House, they have to share a representative.
Oh, okay.
So unlike the Senate, they get
Yeah.
their own.
Right,
so they
right.
have a little bit more flexibility and time to focus just on that district.
Yeah.
We share that. I'm housed with Representative Ron Stewart out of Tulsa. We're both freshmen.
Oh,
And
okay.
so meaning, have to be mindful of her
Yeah.
time, but I'm not against it. I'm just trying to think of a practical side of how
Sure.
we could do that in a way that makes sense.
Yeah. A lot of times, even finding when to vote and where to vote and all that sort of thing is so difficult. And it's probably on purpose, I would think. Like, the website is terrible.
The website is terrible.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, even today,
Uh-huh.
as a legislator, I had deleted several emails and I was trying to go back and I was like, I know the committee was sent to, like, the bills were sent to us.
Mhm.
And I tried to go on the website and I was struggling. So
Yeah.
I think in itself is like,
Is there any plan to update the website?
that's a great question.
Yeah. Because I think that if it were user-friendly, people would be involved,
and
if
maybe,
you could email the committee members from the website
Yes.
or all that
Yeah.
sort of thing. I
And-
don't know how difficult that would be to do, but
and
truly.
see the agenda.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
today
Like,
I
if there was a
struggling
place
it.
to go, I mean, it'd be great if it were on social media.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's possible, but if just the website could be more informative and more user-friendly, I think it would be
Yeah.
helpful.
I will say, I don't know if you can put links, but
Yeah, if we do like a QR
okay,
code.
yeah. This is not practical in what we were talking about necessarily in step 2, but I will say this app I use it all the time,
Okay.
and it's called the Oklahoma Electric Cooperative,
Okay.
and
Oklahoma.
it at least, yeah.
There it is.
It at least will show you if you go to, so if we went to House, it'll show you leadership members and it shows you the committees.
Okay.
So you can at least go and see the committees.
Okay.
And it will, if you click on somebody, it'll tell you where their office is
Oh.
and what their email address is and who their assistant is.
Okay. And can you email directly from that page?
You can't, well, no. Oh, you
Yeah,
can.
okay,
Look at
great,
that.
great.
I've never tried that before. So,
Excellent.
yeah, so that at least, I use that. This is very user friendly. Once it's updated, it updates for each session.
Yeah.
So you just have to download it once.
Okay.
And it does federal too. I don't
Okay.
use that as much, but
Well, that's kind of what I'm talking about. then,
yeah,
that kind of
that's
thing.
a tool I use all the time. It isn't
Yeah.
the step 2, which is the bills
Uh-huh.
piece, which is in committee. What bills are assigned to committee? I'm not there yet, but this at least gives you an easy, practical way, especially if you come to the Capitol.
It
and-
doesn't tell you about the bills, but
No.
it just tells you about the
Yeah.
committees. Okay.
So this is
Okay.
basic support help at this point.
Okay,
But
I
if people
gotcha.
come to the Capitol, it's really easy to figure out where their rooms are.
Yes.
All of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And if they're concerned about certain legislation, if they care a lot about education, they can at least find committee members and, try to tell their story by at
Yeah.
least finding who sits on the committee.
Yeah. Speaking of education, I saw the Ryan Walters thing. What do you think about that? What's going on there?
I am grateful for any pushback against Superintendent Ryan Walters. I feel like he has basically been unchecked, his power, since he became our state superintendent, and has harmed our public school system without that checks and balance in place. And so it at least is a step in the direction. The State Board of Education has been in lockstep with Ryan Walters since he started. And so I'm not sure if the new board members will push back.
That's what I was wondering. Do you know anything about the new board members?
Not really.
Because it seems good, but
I know that's, I don't want to get up any hope, but I am grateful for the opportunity that there will be new voices, and I hope they're empowered to speak up.
Yeah. Are these just like friends of STIT, or?
One of them I know is, I don't know him, but there's one who his wife works with public school teachers.
Okay.
And so that to me is
in what context?
They're they're not a union, but they're like a union. They're a professional teacher organization.
Okay.
So in that capacity. So, and the other two, I know as much as everybody else who's probably read non-doc or any of the other articles on them. Yeah. So I don't know them, but I hope that they feel empowered to push back, and that they have the courage to listen to people in their district who have been very frustrated with the rhetoric and I think the focus on non-educational outcomes as it relates to religion and social issues that have really are not the challenges that face our schools. What faces our schools is having qualified educators in the classroom.
Right.
Access to a full education, access to books that encourage reading, and hard conversations, critical thinking conversations that should be happening every day in our school, with the autonomy of our educators not feeling that they have any fear from our State Department of Ed.
Right. Weren't there some teachers that Ryan Walters was going after? What's going on with that? Has he gotten teachers fired, or?
So I do think he has suspended some teachers' licenses.
Okay.
What I was outside of, obviously the one in Norman who, put a QR code up in her room and was,
I didn't hear about that.
Oh, that one was a terrible one. Yeah. Other than her,
what happened there?
She put a QR code to a Brooklyn library and said you can get your banned books here, basically. Yeah. She did lose her teaching certificate, but she has attorneys pushing back against that.
Okay.
So that one. So, but there were people who were listed that had threats of getting their teaching license suspended without any evidence or any
right.
Those people have been removed from they're not currently on, from my understanding.
They're not on the shit list.
They're not on the shit list, yes. Okay. So he did get pushed back on those. Okay. So, and I know there's legislation now that's being pushed that is trying to address some of that challenge of just putting names. That's someone's livelihood. Right. And not having due process, not having an opportunity to not even knowledge that your name is on that list. That's, to me, that's a non-starter. That's not how it works.
Was it a public list?
Oh, yeah, it's a public list.
It's a public
list.
So it's still out there.
So it changes every month. Each month when the agenda goes up, they'll have a list of teachers that are, but they have to go through due process. And
it's not all teachers that just refuse to have a...
Correct. No. Yeah. There is a process. I think he did take advantage of the process.
Yeah, he just kind of lumped them in with people that really probably shouldn't be teaching.
Correct. Yeah, there are people that should not be in our school systems.
Right.
And we need a process for that, but it shouldn't be anybody.
Right. Okay. Good deal. I don't know if you wrote these bills, but you presented, or they were presenting some bills the other day about homelessness. Can you talk about those a little bit?
So mine was on affordable housing.
Okay.
And so typically just how it works is you might write your own bills, but a lot of times you come up with the idea. For me, I had attended an event on just affordable housing in Oklahoma, and the challenges of evictions in our state. Specifically,
And who put that on?
That was the Affordable Housing Coalition.
Oh, okay.
And
that sounds like a good
yes,
contact.
Yes. And they did a presentation and really talked about the high rates of eviction in our state, the low cost for filing an eviction on somebody, and the very short timeline that a person who's going through an eviction goes through. It's one of the shortest timelines
Yes.
in the country.
Yeah.
And so that meeting led me to say, okay, and what part can I fix or try to
Yes.
fix? There's 10 different bills you could file, just learning about the challenges that people face for affordable housing. And my bill focuses on the filing fee. Our filing fees in Oklahoma are extremely low. It costs $45 plus filing fees. It's about $58 to file an eviction on someone. And if you go to an eviction court in Oklahoma City, I attended one of those. There were over 200 people that were on the docket, and over half of those were dismissed because they just had paid late. And so our system wasn't set up for a eviction pay late service. Evictions really should be for individuals who haven't paid their rent, and they should have to talk with the tenant, and land before they file those evictions.
Right.
And so the way they were kind of filed is a step, okay, your next step is an eviction. And the problem with that is if over half of your people are, if those cases are dismissed because they've actually paid, that's great, except that eviction stays on your permanent record. So next time you go, maybe you live in that apartment for a year, you try to go find another apartment, and now you have an eviction record on your, even though it was dismissed.
Right.
And so there's also legislation. Julia Kurt has legislation to address that component of it.
Yes.
So mine addresses the filing fee, increasing it to $100. Hers addresses if your case is dismissed, that doesn't follow you permanently.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That
Yeah.
would be amazing. I work at Homeless Alliance, so I deal with that a lot.
Yeah,
with
yeah,
people
yeah.
with evictions or
Yeah.
felonies,
Yeah.
things like that. That would actually be the felony thing. I mean, it's not over once you serve your time. It follows you forever. You can't get a job. You lose your housing. What are you going to do?
Right.
You're homeless.
Yeah.
So, and now it's criminalized, or in some places, I guess, to be homeless. So it's basically prison forever.
Yeah.
Or institutions forever. Do you see, do you think that these bills have a good chance of passing that are?
I hope so. My eviction filing bill passed out of committee on Thursday with an 11-0, so no one voted against it.
Good.
Okay. But like I told you, then now there's a next step, so now it has to go to a different committee before it goes to the floor. So so I'm navigating that process of finding out who's on that second committee. Who do I need to talk to, and what issues do they care about, and how can I align that issue with the importance of this bill too?
Yes.
Making it speak to them.
I get the sense that a lot of Republicans are angry at homeless people for some reason, and it's like a punishment sort of thing, instead of a rehabilitative thing, or just giving them the resources because fire burned their home down or something. Is there I'm trying to think, is there anything that we can do to influence the people opposed to supporting the unhoused and people that are in hard financial situations?
I think about that a lot, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I sit on the Human Services Appropriations and Budget Committee, And Representative Daniel Pay, who's a Republican, actually really believes in us understanding who we're trying to serve.
Oh, good.
And so we actually took a tour of the Homeless Alliance
I
as a committee.
I saw your picture.
And so that's really, to me, that's really important. And part of that conversation wasn't just like, here are all the incredible things that Homeless Alliance is doing, which is important. The other part of that conversation is really trying to talk about the challenges that people face on a daily basis.
Right.
And I think people don't understand that, like, it's not going to take one touch to say, hey, we have this service for you, you're going to need this, that there's, if you've been living on the streets and understanding, okay, here's the supportive services that it takes to get people housed, and then the additional supports that person needs to stay housed. It's not intuitive for people to know how to get your water started, how to electricity, how to make sure that you, like, what if you don't have a car, and getting on the bus system and finding an apartment nearby, making sure you have an ID, have you had a bank account before? What does that look like? I mean, there's so many components, and I actually heard the mayor speak one time, and he said, people think it takes 2 or 3 touches. It takes 20 touches for us to make this work. And we have to be patient, because in the end, we all want the same thing.
Right.
But our timeline can't be rushed, because that's what we want. That may not be successful for the individual trying to help. And so I think about that a lot. It's just like, I don't know how you have conversations and share people's stories in a way that resonates, that to me maybe provides a little more empathy to the process.
Well, I was really surprised and shocked in a bad way about that statistic that over 60% of evictions include children. So I just don't see what the plan is if we're not helping the unhoused. We have all these children growing up homeless. I don't know if what I've heard from a client is that the unhoused are starting gangs. So because like they don't have, they have to have protection, right? So I just see this being a long-term problem if we don't try to solve it now.
Well, and to your point, Tulsa has done a study looking at, we talk a lot about chronic absenteeism. That's when kids miss 10 or more days. And their kind of research shows that the majority of those chronic absences are due to, evictions or other challenges that the family is facing. And that if we are going to ensure that kids are at school, they're going to have reliable and safe housing. And if they are evicted, then they're going to have to move to a different location, and most likely they're going to be moving to a different school. And that's a huge setback when you change schools throughout the year. That's not the kids' fault, that's not the school's fault, but it's just really a lot more challenging for everybody. And so when we talk about it, to me, it's all very much connected. We can't solve school unless we also solve housing and solve, livable wages. And it just, the problem's not like just, we'll solve this and everything will be great. It's much more complicated than that.
I feel like there's kind of a pushback against working together on things. People want to solve it with a bill or something instead of taking the longer, slower, harder route. So I'm, like with the making homelessness illegal except in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, like is that something you think will pass?
No.
Okay, good.
Okay,
so not to worry about.
Not to worry. Okay. But again, it's a bill that makes a short-term headline.
Yes.
But also, negatively impacts those who care about that. You
Yes.
know, what? That's the part that I struggle with. It's like, why put that fear into people's head?
Exactly. Yeah. What is the strategy there? Whenever they keep on coming out with these like sadistic bills that people react very emotionally against, do they not realize that people, or are their constituents asking for these bills? Is that what's going on?
I don't know. Sometimes it's hard when you live in a really empathetic district to know, because I'm not going to get that,
Yeah.
When I talk to people in the doors and I ask what they care about and what they want to see changed,
Right.
This district would never say anything like that. But, I'm not going to speak for other people's community.
Understand that. Yeah, because I went to a committee meeting where they were trying to outlaw the pride flag on public property. Kevin West.
Yes, I was there for
You were
that.
there?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So,
Cindy Munson and I spoke against it.
oh my gosh, thank you for doing that. Did that pass?
It did pass.
It did pass. So pride flags are no longer...
No, so it just passed out of committee. That's why it's this long haul process.
No, I was there. Yeah, I remember that.
Unfortunately, so
And
it
I
hasn't
remember that
gone anywhere.
They opened the committee with a prayer to Jesus, which I think is illegal, right? Is that?
It is. We open every day.
Every day.
Yes.
Who's decided
that? You don't have to come in for it. You don't.
Yeah, but it's still a government.
I know. Yeah. So every morning, before House and Senate meets, not in committees usually, just on the House.
Well, they did it in committee.
Okay.
They wouldn't let us bring pride flags in, but they prayed to Jesus. But yeah.
So you might have gone last year. They did.
Yeah, last year.
Okay. The bill came up again this year. Sorry, that's why I was confused. Yes.
Well, it passed last year.
It didn't make it all the way through last year.
Oh, it didn't. Okay.
Yeah. And so it's only gotten through committee this year. He's trying again.
Okay, so the idea is that basically they just don't want protests. Is that what it is?
I don't know that they don't want protests. Oh, you can't. It's illegal to bring signs into. No one can. So even if you are, last week they had some anti-abortion, pro-abortion signs. They were not allowed in the committee. They had to stay on the outside of it.
Right,
so it does work on both sides. You're not allowed to bring.
Why is that?
I actually don't know that. That's a great question.
It seems like they should listen to the people.
Yeah. I think as long as people are not, the signs seem indifferent, but I don't know. I'm sure there is some rule in our rule book that I have not read that states that, and I don't know circa when that started.
Well, and I know that we weren't allowed to talk in committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is unique. We do not have a structure, a formalized structure in our committee process to hear from community members. In other states, they do have a more formal process to have that interaction, which I think is critically important. I don't know if we've never had it, and I don't know what appetite there would be to have it. But
what it does, I think the whole structure of it, well, first of all, the building itself is super imposing, and they have art on the wall with like slaves in it and stuff. I just it's just an imposing place. Everyone's dressed up really nice and expensive and stuff, but it's our building,
Totally.
And but we don't feel welcome there, and we're not welcome there, like in committee meetings and stuff, to voice our opinions or anything like that. So what it does is it really separates the government from the people, and the people, I think, are inclined to believe that that the government officials are just going to strong arm whatever they believe into law.
Yeah.
And we don't really have any effect. Yeah. So everyone's given up, and no one votes.
100%.
Because we don't think we're going to make a difference. But from what you're telling me, it seems like it is possible.
It is possible, and that's the part where I think, when you see bills die and don't make it anywhere, there are conversations going on with people to be like, you can't bring that up. This will impact people, you know? Killing a bill before it's heard is a very powerful step. Or changing legislation before it gets to committee because you read something that's like, hey, this is not doing what you said it's going to do. You need to change that. And that's not going to be a flashy win. But I agree. I honestly, a couple of Dem legislators and I've been talking. One he works in other states as his other job on advocacy, and we do a disservice to our state to not have that opportunity for people to come in and weigh on decisions. Like, the only time we really do it is through the rulemaking process. When rules are presented, there is a time where people can provide feedback either through email, or they can come to
rules about how the committees function,
or no rules. So, for example, my focus is always education because that's the background I came from. But so when Ryan Walters had his bill that, you know, everyone was going to have to turn in a birth certificate to prove that they were a United States citizen, and that he created a rule for that. And in January they presented the rule, and they had, I forget how long you have, but they have to collect comments on the rule, and they also have to have a time where you can come to the State Department of Ed and have a public comment where you can say if you were for or against that. Overwhelmingly, both online comments and in-person comments were against the legislation. And it sounds as if that was a huge point of contention for Governor Stitt, that he felt like that was a bridge too far, that we should not go after immigrant children, and that we should educate all kids in our public school system. But that was changed. That was changed through the public comment system. So we have it on the rules side. We don't have it when people are passing laws. And I do think we miss out on a lot when we don't have that process. So.
On the rules side, is there someone that could send us an alert? Whenever
I think people do pretty good. I mean, I know, so that comments rules are December, January through February, and then they go to legislation. So I know ACLU has done a good job, Freedom Oklahoma has done a good job of trying to...
What about the Democratic Party in Oklahoma City? What are they doing?
Oklahoma County Democrats, I do think, are... the County Democratic Party has really tried to get more engaged. I would say they are more on the organizing side of just recruiting and trying to get people involved in elections at the local level.
You mean not to vote? Or
to vote,
enter,
but also to enter, to make sure that we have more candidates, school board, city council, different levels that are not necessarily, their focus has not been as much at the state level, but that's because they're the Oklahoma County Democrats, so that's going to be their focus. I don't work as much with the state at this point to be able to answer that question.
That would be, because I feel like there are so many sources, and on social media I think people follow so many accounts, and the algorithms are weird, so the chances of actually getting the information are pretty low. I mean, you see things come up in, if you have friends that are interested, they'll post things and you get information, but if there was a reliable source like the Democratic Party or something, then that would be helpful. If they could tell us, okay, this bill is, this rule is coming up, so you can go and talk about it. Things like that. And actually telling us what is going on instead of telling us to vote, because we want to vote, but we don't know the people, know, and who has time, to get to know all the local people that are running. So maybe I'll talk to them also. Yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah. So what was your, how did you get into politics? Did they recruit you?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I had, for the last 5 years, I worked for Oklahoma Education Association.
Okay.
So working with public school teachers,
Uh-huh.
part-time with rural schools as an
Okay.
organizer, and then part-time at the Capitol as one of their lobbyists.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of knew the building going into it. It's
Yeah.
completely different in this role. And then before that, I worked for the Regional Food Bank of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, people.
How much of a chance does someone who is not from politics have of running a close race?
I
Do
mean,
you have to really kind of start young, or?
I don't think so. I
No.
think for me, a lot of my connections that I made was through my work at the food bank. It's just like very community-centered projects through OEA, working with teachers throughout the state.
Yeah. So just being involved.
Being involved, like being at PTA for my kids' school, like, you know.
And you probably shouldn't be a politician if you're not involved, because you don't know what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I feel. So that to me is very important. Is feeling connected to the community that you're serving.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because there's a lot of nuance, and if you're online, it doesn't look like it, but there actually is.
Yeah.
And people are not good or bad. It's like the bills are, some of them are not good or bad. They're just different ways of thinking about things.
Totally.
Yeah. I would really, I actually invited Ryan Walters on Instagram to come to a show here and meet me, because I needed to talk to him, but he wouldn't do it. He didn't respond.
Yeah.
I appreciate your social media.
Oh, thank you.
And I think that, that's a service that is really important, that people be able to see what's going on. And respond to their constituents, like when they are messaged, and that sort of thing. So,
yeah, I try.
Yeah.
So.
I was gonna ask you also about art. Like, are you into art at all? Like, is there anything that you like? Do you have a favorite type of art, or
I don't know that
do you
I have
collect any art?
We do have art in our house. I would say it's probably. Most of our art is places. Yeah, landscape, I guess.
Yeah.
Places, not necessarily.
What draws you to that?
It's a compromise piece for my husband and I.
Oh, okay.
Something we both like. So
interesting.
But we love. My parents collected art, and their look was like, I would say, Mexican Gothic Southwestern art that I grew up with in Paris, Texas. So,
interesting.
Very eclectic, and so, but ours is probably a little more traditional. But, places. I love traveling. I love people. So just that kind of comes out.
I would tell you a good place to find supporters is in the art scene.
Yeah.
It seems like it's really growing quickly, and there are all these collectives kind of popping up.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've, like Factory Obscura, and then Paseo has several, and then there's a place called, what is it called? It's called The Sanctuary. It's like a goth punk venue.
Okay.
It's connected to an antique and taxidermy place, and she owns both of them.
Okay, where is it? Is it?
It's
like Shepherd? No,
it's like 10th and Penn or something.
Okay.
Yeah, and or Virginia, 10th and Virginia.
Okay.
And Mycelium. But even like I went to Edmond, and I went to the Art Institute in Edmond. They had a show, and there were like 40 people there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like it's really, I think people are finding art to be a really great excuse to meet other people and get to know their communities. Yeah. And like at Mycelium, they got some land, and they're going to start a community garden.
I love that.
And they have like a list of names that and they're putting skill sets by them. So like if someone needs a mechanic or something like that. So just kind of like supporting each other, because I feel like we've lost faith in the federal government and somewhat the state government too. So if I could solve a problem that's not a problem that probably government can solve, but something that I think about a lot is the Surgeon General. I think of his name. He just left.
oh my gosh.
The Oklahoma?
No, for the United States.
Oh, okay.
Vivek Murphy. Anyway, his
Oh.
whole focus the last 4 years has been on loneliness and the importance of creating community.
Oh, really?
And
Wow. What did he do?
his is really not, he just wants to talk about it more, that people feel
Okay.
more lonely, that
Yeah.
like people feel disengaged, and that has led us to this path of people, distrust, it leads to it just leads to lack of communication, and just loneliness is, he sees it as it's barriers, but it's also a public health issue, it leads to, just public health issues that you don't think, people that are lonely have worse health outcomes, I guess is a more clear way to say that. And so anyway, I love that, what you're talking about, in the sense that art brings people together and helps, people find a community.
One other thing, this is my last, I know you, thank you for saying
Yeah,
so long.
absolutely.
But is there any work on public transportation?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say I would lean into locally on that issue. I really do think our city council, I know Joe Beth and and James Cooper have really been focused on public transportation.
Okay. James Cooper and
Joe Beth Hammond.
Joe Beth Hammond.
And they are, they got the DART, the fast bus that we have now. That's really been a priority for them. Sidewalks, not just, that mass transportation, you have to have good sidewalks to get to those. I don't know as much about transportation. What I've seen on the local level is that has become a bigger investment. And when I've talked to, actually I was at like an event for Oklahoma City, and they had invited legislators, and I talked to the person who was over Embark, and just talking about like the growth of Oklahoma City is coming at a faster pace than we probably all want.
Yes.
And that if we don't prioritize,
well, I like pace, but
but just if we don't prioritize an investment in mass transit, we're gonna end up in a situation like Austin, where traffic becomes really complicated, and a place that people, so I think we've got to be more forward facing on that issue.
Okay.
So.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
No problem.